Welcome to the show. My name is Charlton with Big C. This is Charlton and Big C Sports. We do it every Monday through Friday at 5 o'clock p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Worldwide, today is a beautiful June the 7th, 2016. And Big C, I want to say thank you to all the people that tweet out to us and follow the program. And I also want to say that we are so grateful to have so many great things to talk about. But before we even get into that, Big C, I just want to touch again on the greatness of the late Muhammad Ali and how much he meant to not just the sporting world, but not just in the United States, but worldwide. Muhammad Ali was such a lightning rod of a person and someone who stood for civil rights. He is someone who was very confident in his ability. But Ali, a lot of things he spoke about, Big C, they came to pass when he said, "I am the greatest." He really meant that, Big C. And again, just your thoughts on Ali and what he meant to you, not only as someone who's been in sports, but someone who's been in the broadcast booth as well. Just your thoughts on Ali and what he's meant to the world, Big C.
Well, as a young man, Charlton, growing up in a separated nation, and you were able to view Ali, Charlton, and see him as he came along and took over the reins as a heavyweight champion and dominated the world, and delivered a message to minorities, is that you can speak out. You don't have to hide. You don't have to be humble for what you have done. As everybody always said, somebody needs to shut him up. Well, no one could do that throughout his lifetime, Charlton. He succumbed to Parkinson's disease after a long battle. But even in his fight against Parkinson's, Charlton, he was a very loud voice and advocate for those who did not have the means that Mr. Ali had, Charlton. Is that he opened up the world's awareness to make people proud, to make families not want to shun those that they had within their midst. He raised so much money for this debilitating disease, Charlton. This man was the ultimate warrior. We talk about the MMA and how tough those guys are. This man was the ultimate warrior. In the ring, out of the ring, in the political arena, in the streets, and in life. And, you're going to keep getting a lot of pour-ins from him now that they've taken his remains back to Louisville and they have the services planned for this weekend, Charlton.
Yeah, Thursday, I believe. Thursday.
But this man, the greatness resonates forever with Mr. Ali.
Well,
and when you think about it, it makes you proud, if you didn't know him, to know his name.
Well, I think you're right about that, Big C. And when I think about Ali and we look at fighting, you talked about MMA and how MMA now is kind of taken over because anyone can do it. You don't have to be in great boxing condition because you're only fighting 3 to 5 rounds in MMA. And I'm not saying it's not a difficult sport. But Ali, when he fought Frazier, it was 15 rounds. And some of the older boxers they fought 15 rounds, and then I guess it got down to 12 rounds for a lot of fighters for their safety.
Yeah, Charlton, but if you go back to the turn of the century and you think about the first heavyweight champion of the world, Jack Johnson. Jack Johnson fought a fight one time that was 122 rounds long.
Wow.
Those fights in those days prior to, boxing being altered in the 20s is that you fought until the fight was over. That's what it was. That 15 rounds came in the 20s, but prior to that, you just beat somebody till they can no longer stand, Charlton.
And that's the credible thing about boxing and how it's become regulated. It's kind of an oxymoron to say that they made boxing safer, because when we talk about head trauma, Big C, it's always focused on the NFL. It's always focused on football. But boxers, a lot of them, we hear the term that a fighter is punch drunk. And that's a real issue there because they get punch drunk. They get more brain trauma than football players because they don't wear a helmet. And when I think about what Ali has meant to not just the world of boxing, but the world of acting as well. And this segment is also sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealer, home of the all-new Escalade, the standard of the world. And when you go down and test drive it, let them know that Charlton and Big C sent you. But Big C...
Well, Charlton, 3 years ago, you talk about head trauma with boxers. Now, the 1984 Olympics produced 3 or 4 gold medal winners that went on to become champions in the professional ranks. One of those fighters was Pernell Sweet Pea Whitaker. Now, 3 years ago, I ran across Pernell. We were traveling through the same airport. And I looked at this young man, and he moved as if he had a stroke, Charlton.
Yeah.
Pernell Whitaker was in his 30s. but he had so much head trauma in his short professional boxing career because the handlers did not always care about the boxers. I recall Ali's last big fight. That was with Larry Holmes.
Yeah.
When Angelo Dundee jumped in the ring and grabbed Larry Holmes and said enough.
Yeah.
Because he knew he was jeopardizing the health and the life of his greatest friend.
Yeah.
Now, even in Ali's last fight against Dwayne Burbick,
yeah,
Angelo Dundee would not even go in his corner because he had advised him not to fight. And he did not want to see him hurt anymore because he knew his skills would greatly diminish. So he would not represent him in that corner. But the champ, his pride, made him have that fight. It was his last, and it was devastating loss.
Yeah.
But, a lot of the trauma that he suffered was in those last three defeats that he had in his career, Charlton.
Well, Big C, when you think about that, and I look at some of the great fighters over the years, and as a young boy growing up here in California, of course, fighting was free. You could watch it on ABC Sports at nighttime, but I remember the great Thomas Hitman Hearns.
It was free. We had to watch it on closed circuit, Charlton. We had to go to the arena, buy some popcorn, sit up in the bleachers, and hopefully see one of Ali's fights.
Well, growing up in segregation, obviously there's a lot of pain that we had to go through. And again, that's what I like about Ali, because he's someone that gave people hope that the future would be better. And I was thinking about the great Thomas Hitman Hearns, and he was a great fighter. He had guys like Marvelous Marvin Hagler and the great Sugar Ray Leonard, who patterned himself after the great Muhammad Ali. But these fighters, what I love about them is because Ali made it possible for people to accept black fighters in prime time, they also made a lot of money because Ali opened those doors. When you looked at Liston and some of the fighters before Ali, there was not a lot of money to be made in the world of boxing, but Ali made it. He made the sport popular. He and the great Howard Cosell always having these great interviews. But Ali, Big C, I know we have Floyd Money Mayweather. I think he made, $200 million against Pacquiao, that stage fight they had down in Las Vegas?
Chump change.
Chump change, right? So even him, and they all say Ali's the greatest, but he had so much more character and so much more to offer the world than even modern day fighters. So it's not fair to ask someone to live up to what Ali did, Big C. But do you see the contrast in how Ali was more of a showman and also a spokesperson for civil rights compared to what you have today? Guys have 10 times his wealth, but they don't have 10 times his character, Big C.
Well, you're never going to find another athlete, Charlton, with his character, with his public service awareness, with his conscientious thought about other human beings, Charlton.
Yeah.
That's what he did. He was an ambassador for human beings.
Yeah.
Not for sports, not for America, for human beings. And he remained that through the end of his life because of his fight and public display of Parkinson's disease and his fundraising to his last days, Charlton. This man, like I said, there's one figure that everybody can identify with like him with one name.
Yeah.
If you say Jesus, if you say Ali, you could be anywhere in the world, and people knew who you were talking about, Charlton.
Yeah, Jesus and Ali, both were the greatest in the world. In fact, but Jesus was better because he's undefeated, Big C, as far as I know. But when you think about this, too, one more thing. I was talking to a sports agent, a guy who represents some players that played for the Raiders and some former NFL players, and his name is Al Fisher, and he runs a sports promotion company here in Sacramento. And just talking to him about some of the great athletes, how he would help them find work outside of their playing days. And when I go back to Ali, as you know, Big C, you grew up when people were actually read, okay? So you read a lot more than I do, Big C. When I was something...
I didn't have the internet. I had a black and white brown TV.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, television when I was a child, Charlton, went off at 11:42 at night. We had a test pattern come across the street.
You can stay up to 11:42 at night. My bedtime, my curfew was 10 o'clock, Big C. You guys had it lucky.
We got to do that on Friday and Saturday night, Charlton. We had unlimited, but after that, it was time to go to bed. There was nothing else to view.
That's so funny. The color lines would come up on the TVs. But I just want to bring this up, and then we get to a few more things that I want to talk about. When I looked at even the great George Foreman, that Ali beat him, Ali Boombaye, when he beat him over in Africa, and the crowd was chanting Ali Boombaye. You look at how the great George Foreman, he got away from boxing after that happened. He said that he had some type of religious experiment, but a lot of people call it the rope-a-dope was the experiment that he really had before he was knocked out in the 8th round. But George Foreman now, he's known as much now for his George Foreman grill than he was for the heavyweight champion at one time, because Ali's presence was so much bigger than any other heavyweight fighter. But I know he didn't have the undefeated record. I know you know a lot more about some of the fighters in the past, whether it's Dempsey or whether it's Larry Holmes or even Sugar Ray. But some of the great fighters in the past, Big C, they did not have the I guess you would say the chance to go out and talk to the media the way Ali did. So what was it about Ali that made a lot? You made this comment yesterday. It made some people, even in the black community, not like him. It's because he was too boastful, Big C?
Yes, it was, Charlton. You know, many black people, when Ali came along in the 60s,
yeah.
You need to know your place.
Yeah.
You know, they would say that to him. His own people, because the fear that had been incited in that culture for decades, Charlton.
Yeah.
And they knew the acts that would occur to black men who were very vocal and go out and make gestures and say whatever they felt in public. Normally, there was a lynching, a shooting.
Yeah.
All of those things that occurred when you think about Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, you know, the things that happened to them. You know, you think about David Pettit's bridge.
Yeah.
When they crossed that and the things that happened.
Yeah.
You know, the violence that went towards black people doing peaceful things, making a stand for a better life. You know, America has been a crude place for a long time, Charlton. We can always say that things have gotten better here, which they have to a degree.
Yeah.
But it's still a very crude country as far as the advancement and the equality of African-American people, Charlton. We have an African-American president. None of us ever expected to see that in our lifetime. We all thought Bill Clinton was as close as we were going to get.
Yeah.
But, you know, when you look at, we had heavyweight champions who could talk with presidents,
yeah,
who could sit with presidents. We had that, who was honored by presidents. He's the only one, Charlton.
Yeah.
You know, other than Joe Louis, he's the only African-American fighter to receive the Presidential Medal of Freedom.
That's amazing.
So,
that's amazing.
When you think about the impact that he had on this country, you know, he doesn't really get put down in all the civil rights annals.
Yeah.
But if you just wrote a book about his involvement, his advancement in the movement, you would see that he was one of the top 3 men in the civil rights path for African Americans, Charlton.
And when you think about what you just mentioned too, because today the African American athlete, if you're an athlete, you're glorified. And I know there are doctors who are African American, there are lawyers who are African American. We had Thurgood Marshall. We had so many actors who have reached acclaim, irrespective of winning an Oscars. Having an Oscar doesn't mean that you've reached anything. It's just it's an atmosphere of kind of the cronyism.
But Charlton, we used to have actors that were activists.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
When you think
Harry
about
Belafonte.
Sidney Poitier,
Yeah.
Harry Belafonte, these people were activists. They laid their careers on the line. They relied on Hollywood for a living.
Yeah.
But they also knew that the majority of their films were seen by African Americans.
Yeah.
And so they needed both sides of the ledger to continue to strive in America. So back then, when you talk about civil rights in the 50s and 60s, Charlton, it was a collective social issue,
Yeah.
okay? Now, if I have a little bit, that's my social issue. I'm going to take care of mine. I'm not going to say anything to cross anybody. I'm going to make sure that my millions keep coming in.
Yeah.
Those gentlemen did not make millions, Charlton, but they took what they had and they shared their wealth and they shared their knowledge.
Yeah.
And by them doing that, now we have multi-millionaire African Americans, Charlton, because of the sacrifice of these great men of the 50s and 60s, Charlton.
Well, see, speaking of multi-millionaires, and we call this the $1 Million Show, Big C, and so many things we talk about come to pass, I want to also say that this segment is sponsored by your Northern California BMW dealers, home of the ultimate driving machine. Go down and test drive the 1 Series all the way up to the flagship 600 horsepower M7, also known as a 760 Li. And when you're test driving it, let them know that Charlton and Big C sent you. Now, Big C, this is so important to me, what I'm going to say, because sometimes we get numb. We get things twisted. We take things for granted. When we see, for the most part, on television, how the young black athlete is considered someone that's a household name, whether it's a Steph Curry, a LeBron James, a Jerry Rice. Even if you go back to, say, a Muhammad Ali or Joe Frazier, those guys are famous people. The average person will never reach that type of stardom. And this is what I want to bring up, and maybe I'm guilty of it too. Because nowadays, when we talk about Ali was an activist, Dr. King not an athlete but an activist, Malcolm X not an athlete but an activist, there are more people who are praised now for signing the highest shoe contract than standing out against social causes. And now some people will say, well, someone donates to a cause, but they're philanthropic, but they don't want anyone to know. Well, why make that a secret? Let people know if you're doing great things for society. I think that's what Ali did. All of his philanthropy, maybe not all of it, but he was someone who spoke out against it. And I think if these corporations who take millions of dollars from the black community in the form of athletes, not really getting them an education, and taking that money, it goes right back into the white community, whether it's in the hands of an agent or a bank or even that university itself. There's not a lot to be shown for the masses when they come through and they take every resource out of that community. Now, some people may say, well, you're getting an education, but the return on investment, you opened my eyes on it, Big C, because I was kind of naive thinking, hey, they got a chance to go to college. But there's so much money that's not returned to the community where the kids are taken out of to make institutions of higher education more profitable, Big C. Ali spoke out against that, Big C. Just your thoughts on that.
Well, if you look at the return on investment when we talk about that, let me go pay this player here this copious amount of money to wear our shoes and endorse our product.
Yeah.
Let's put them on the cover of Madden game.
Yeah.
We have young African Americans talking about buying a Madden, an Xbox, a PlayStation. You don't have them talking about buying books. You have them talking about buying the next pair of Jordans for $300 that come out.
Yeah.
We're talking about inner city kids who don't have a job, nor do their parents have a job. So where is this money coming from? When we talk about true advocates and corporate America, as you spoke about, pilferages the African American community in many ways.
Yeah.
You take the cream of the crop, and that's what came from desegregation, Charlton, when you look at the predominant white colleges, the historical colleges. They went in and pilfered the historical black colleges, took the greatest athletes out of there. Just like when Branch Rickey called off Jackie Robinson in baseball, it wasn't so much about integration of baseball.
Yeah.
It was about taking the economics from the Negro Leagues. If I take all the young best players coming up in the Negro Leagues, then all they're left is with these old players. So the fans now can come to a Major League Park, we'll sell them the cheap seat out of the bleachers where they had box seats at an African-American game.
Yeah.
But we're taking away their up-and-coming product. So now the league, after 10 years after Jackie Robinson's arrival, the league was disbanded, Charlton, because they no longer had any young stars. And you had already seen the stars that were there. They had gotten old and grizzly, Charlton.
Yeah.
So this is what happened. We'll go in, take the best of what you have coming, and then let you survive with the old people. And I'm one of those myself, old people.
Okay. There's nothing wrong with old people, Big C. We're all going to get there someday.
That's what happened in these arenas, Charlton. And that's what has happened here, is that you take these young people and you take their minds away from education and you tell them, hey, you can play like Mike because all you got to do is get on NBA Now on your Xbox or PlayStation. Oh, you can be the next great running back. Okay, all you got to do is play Madden. You know, this is what we have. And so we have couch potatoes. I remember when I was a kid, you know, it could be 110 degrees outside.
Yeah.
Mom still says, see you later, get out of the house.
Yeah.
You know, you just came back in before it got dark. That's all it was.
Well, see,
now you got obesity in America with children who never get off the couch or walk outside.
And that's amazing that you say that. And I'm going to say some things, and maybe it's not that popular, but because I think part of the Charlton and Big C Sports Show is we bring these topics up because I think it's real talk. Now, I'm not trying to call anybody out, but you know, when you get a certain amount of fame, just like Ali, what do we really stand for? When I contrast Ali, people all over the world are saying how much he meant to the sports world, but also as an activist. And I'm not saying every athlete has to do that. But when you think of Ali, you think activist. You think the greatest boxer of all time. When you think of Kobe Bryant, what do you think? You think basketball player and how many shoe contracts he has. When you think of someone like LeBron James, do you think activist or do you think, hey, this guy has $1 billion contract with Nike? When you think of someone like Michael Jordan, do you think social activist or do you think, hey, Michael has tennis shoes that he sells for $300 so inner city kids will feel bad and the parents will feel bad because they cannot afford a product, but they have this hero worship. Now, I like Michael Jordan and I also like, you know, Kobe Bryant and LeBron James. I like these guys. And I'm not saying it's their fault, but it's just a shame that they make 50 times more what Muhammad Ali made and they have a voice that could say, let's put some of this money into the United Negro College Fund. Let's put some of this money into Boys and Girls Clubs, which help all kids, not just black kids. And maybe they do, but if they do, they're silent about it. And not just them, but why not the Cleveland Cavaliers? This city burned the LeBron James jersey when he left because they love him so much, right? Do you hear about them offering money to the United Negro College Fund? Or what about Nike? Does Nike offer $100 million to the United Negro College Fund? Because most young African-American kids want to wear Nike. And now Under Armour's in it. They're giving Steph Curry $200 million. Do you think Steph Curry's out talking about how to donate money to the United Negro College Fund? I'm not saying they should or they have to, but they really should say something to even just come an inch closer to what Muhammad Ali was, Big C. We're bringing it up, and I hope most people talk about it too.
You talk about the athletes who get the shoe contracts and all, okay? Let's look at some of these coaches at these major universities. Nick Saban gets $5 million from Nike. Urban Meyer receives $4 million. You go up and down the ledger of these top heritage colleges, and you see these head football coaches receiving millions of dollars. Mike Krzyzewski at Duke has a $7 million contract. They don't play but 40 games a year.
Wow.
$7 million contract in a basketball arena. So when you think up and down the slate, what these coaches make and what they're paid, and you look at Calipari, your homeboy that you kick it with from time to time.
I kick it with him all right.
He makes $5 million at Kentucky for wearing sports appeal. But you say you can't pay a player.
Yeah.
But, when you talk about activists, we don't have those activists in sports. Everybody want to be silent and protect what they have. You're not going to stop paying LeBron James if he goes out and speak up against the injustice in America against young African Americans. You're not going to stop paying because he is still what he is.
Yeah.
When we look at these television shows, we look at ESPN's, when you think about ESPN, the worldwide leader in sports, they have a voice 24 hours a day.
It's more like sycophants, so it's more like hero worship. They're there to worship people. They're here to tell you how great somebody is, but they don't have what Ali had. Now a lot of their broadcasters are trying to say, oh, Ali was so great, he really stood up for injustice against all people, but ESPN has a microphone, and they don't do that.
Why don't they speak about the things that Ali had to go through?
Because they don't care.
They don't know.
They're comfortable.
They don't know, Charlton. They weren't around.
You think they don't know? They don't care.
When you look at people on television, if you're under 35 years of age, you really don't even know how old Ali was or what Ali did for society. You can sit there and say, okay, get to our production people and send me some paperwork so I can talk about Ali, because I don't know anything about the man. I never watched him box.
Yeah.
So what can I tell you about him? I never watched him give a speech. I never watched him go through the atrocities that he had to go through as a man trying to survive in the United States.
Yeah.
So all they're doing is reading a teleprompter or a notepad that's been given to them, Charlton. So when you talk about these people, they are displaced emotionally from reality about what he meant to society, Charlton. And when we look at the young athletes nowadays in the NBA, if you poll the NBA, Charlton, how many players would know how they got the ability to enter the NBA draft early without going to college for 4 years, okay?
Yeah.
Not many of them. I'm going to see probably 4 to 5% of the African-American or even Caucasian NBA players would know who opened the door for them to be able to enter the NBA early. This man's name was Spencer Haywood, Charlton, 1969 out of the University of Detroit, a 6'9" power forward.
Yeah.
Opened the door, challenged, and sued the NBA for the right to work, and won this battle, Charlton, in the Supreme Court. You got to look at the great African-American athletes, dignitaries, and humanitarians who challenged this country, Charlton, who challenged this country for equality and equal rights that no one respects anymore.
Yeah.
They gave up their lives. They gave up their careers to challenge. When you think about Kurt Floyd, you wouldn't know who he is. Kurt Floyd was a second baseman for the St. Louis Cardinals.
Yeah.
Kurt Floyd gave up his baseball career and created free agency in baseball, Charlton. An African-American man. He was an all-star second baseman, but after he created free agency in baseball, he fought for it.
Yeah.
They ostracized him from the game. He was an all-star second baseman. African Americans have made tremendous sacrifice for African American athletes of the day, Charlton, that don't pay homage respectfully to these great gentlemen.
And see, that's incredible that you bring that up, Big C, because it's all about economics too. And the Charlton and Big C Sports is not just about, hey, guess who won the game last night? The Bears beat the Falcons 17-10, and the 49ers beat the Chargers 27-14. It's about economics. It's about social impact. It's about challenging not only ourselves, but people that listen also. And because we do have a voice, we're doing what we can to open the eyes of young players, not just black players, but predominantly black players, because they're the biggest amount that are exploited to come to these universities. And again, I'll touch on this fact that we know USC is going to beat Alabama in the Kickoff Classic, and they brought back Lynn Swann as the athletic director for
he
that.
He can't play, Charlton. His body's worth shaking mine. Okay, he can't play.
No, he's going to play. All they need is one good play. He's going to run that slant the way he did against the Raiders back in the day, Big C, because they don't have Tatum in the secondary.
So leave that high safety back there.
Okay. But Lynn Swann, a decorated African-American, not much younger than Muhammad Ali. I know he has to know that Ali had such a great presence, not only in the world of boxing and sports, but in the world of economics. And here you have a Hall of Fame football player, a guy with 4 Super Bowl rings, and played for the great USC and the John McKay. He's even saying that athletes do not need to get paid. His whole life has been one of being paid. If you have someone in that position and they don't want to bring other people up, we know that not paying athletes is an antitrust violation, according to Jay Billis, who's an attorney out of Duke. But instead of having someone like Lynn Swann become an advocate like a Muhammad Ali and say, stop exploiting these young, poor kids, he's coming along and saying, hey, I got mine, get yours. You don't need money right now. Go pro first. Not everybody's going to go pro, Big C. So even just because you have a black face, it doesn't mean you have the same character that Ali had. I'm not just blaming Lynn Swann. There's a lot of white athletic directors that have the same thought. They don't care about these kids getting money. Just play more football, Big C. Your thoughts on that?
Well, Charlton, it's not just there on the college level, it's on the professional level. When we look at the owners of all these major league organizations, Charlton, when we talk about African Americans giving back to the community, why can't these owners are pilfering the communities, not the athletes, okay, Charlton? It is the owners that are pilfering the community. They're going in and demanding that a city build them a stadium. And when they go in and build a stadium, Charlton, they normally go into the inner city and tear down structures where African Americans were living. Because they said that's the most least expensive property, and whites don't live there, so we can have games there and excessive parking. And it won't bother the African American community, but it would displace the white community. We don't see them giving back into those communities. I mean, we talk about the copious contracts that the black athletes make with the shoe companies, the $200 million and so on. Okay. The white who owns that company, Charlton, if he's giving you $200 million, how many billion does he have, Charlton? Let's be realistic about that, okay? It doesn't hurt. When you think about Nike, and you have hundreds of athletes with billions of dollars in shoe contracts in totality, why don't you take and give back 2% of all the contracts that you have, that you're paying the athletes, that you're paying the coaches, and put them within the inner city, Charlton. Put them in the Boys and Girl Club. Put them in some educational institutes. Put them in some junior highs, some grammar schools, Charlton. Put them in some Boys and Girl Clubs. There's after-school programs that you can create. And I saw a thing on television the other day in Oakland where the NBA had opened up its 113th, 117th Boys and Girls, training center, after-school training center. And I think about the petty number, just 117. Now, the NBA is getting ready to sign an $8 billion contract, Charlton. And you can only toss out 117. There should be one name for every athlete in the NBA, Charlton. That's what it should be. It should be one name for every athlete in every NBA city as well as other cities in the NBA. Go back to some of these players' hometown, Charlton, because many of these athletes came from small, distraught areas. They were fortunate enough to get pimped with a college scholarship and go on and help that university make money. And yes, one or two of them went on and made money for themselves. But that's what we got to look at is the owners. Jerry Jones could build $1 billion stadium. Okay, $1.4 billion. How many schools do we see in Dallas that he's gone out and helped in the inner city? There's a stadium in Dallas that was built, by taxpayer money, a high school stadium that was $64 million. Now, you explain to me why a high school team...
Because it's Texas.
$64 million.
It's Texas.
$64 million stadium. Arthur Blank, in the city of Atlanta, is building the new Mercedes Dome next to the old Georgia Dome. We call it how old is the Coliseum in Oakland? 1963, 66? Okay, and this dome in Atlanta was opened in 92, 94. So I'm kind of thinking that it might be twice as old in Oakland. They can't get an arena or a stadium. The Warriors are leaving town. The Raiders are threatening to leave town again. But these other communities are going in, taking away precious land, not giving back to the community. They may pay off a few people for the land, but the overall impact, you cannot afford to go to a game as a minority person, Charlton.
And that's so important that you bring that up. And this segment is also sponsored by your Northern California Ford dealer, home of the all-new F-150. They build it Ford tough. Go down and test drive it and let them know that Charlton and Big C sent you. Also, BeneathHisWingsFoundation.org. Make a donation today. It's easy, it's fast, it's secure. And contact Cynthia Evans at CYNN Entertainment. When it comes to promotions, she's the best in Northern California. Let them know that Charlton and Big C sent you. Big C, in the last segment of this program, Oakland Alameda County Coliseum, now called O.Co Coliseum, they owe the county of Alameda $40 million for Mount Davis because it was subsidized by taxpayers while they're closing schools in Oakland. Now, Davis is saying he's trying to hold the city hostage, saying if you don't come up with more money, we're going to go to Las Vegas. And most of Oakland it's getting more gentrified now. There's more people, investors coming in, buying up properties, but it is displacing a lot of Black Americans and Hispanic Americans that live in some of the lower income communities. And that's what's wrong with sports, because they could also put that money towards schools to help give people hope, at least in education. But what happens is they'll take the top running back or athlete out of McClymonds or Oakland Tech or Skyline High School or Bishop O'Dowd, and they'll bring him into a university to play sports. And it leaves that kid out of that community, and there's no money going back to it unless that kid becomes a millionaire and gives some money for whatever grant. But I think you're right, Big C. If we could just have that conversation, why not a guy like Jerry Jones? Why not Arthur Blank? Or we know that so many people that own professional sports teams, they're kind of unknown. They're the silent majority, and I'm sure they give back to some place. But it would be great to see some of these great merchandising companies called the NFL. They're selling a jersey for every color or every day of the week, it seems. It would be better if they made it more well known when they gave back to these communities. But see, just your thought on that. How could that happen, though?
Well, Charlton, when you look at it, they want to be secretive about it. It's almost like dating outside your race. I think they look at it from that perspective.
You see, people date outside the race in the South, Big C? Is that breaking news?
Well, what I'm saying is that, okay, we can do this, but we can't let people know we do it. We don't want to think that we're
okay, you got to come to California. You got to come to California more often. People date who they want to date here in California. Are you saying you're good at boys? You do got to hide that kind of stuff, miscegenation in the South, Big C?
Well, it was always been that way, Charlton, when you look at it. You don't let people know what you're doing behind closed doors. And I think you get that with a lot of owners in these professional leagues. I'm not saying that they don't give back, but make it the forefront. Make it like signing a number one draft pick.
Yeah.
When you sit there and you're giving someone an ink pen and you think about the top two quarterbacks that were drafted this year and saying, the number one golf, you're going to get $27 million.
For what?
Why can't, and for what?
For run 14 and 26 at Cal.
Yeah. You give him $27 million and tell him that he's the future of the NFL.
Yeah.
The future of the NFL is education, Charlton.
Yeah.
If you took that $27 million and you gave it back to the educational system within the city that he was drafted in, if you had to equal, think about this. If you had to equal as NFL, whoever you drafted in the first round, their hometown, their county that they grew up in, you had to donate back an equal amount of money that you paid him for being a first-round draft pick. How much better would society be?
Well, think about that, Big C. Here in Sacramento, they just built the Golden One Center. Will open for the Sacramento Kings right downtown near the state capitol. And I think they built it for $540 million. Now, the team is supposedly...
That's probably the price of the land, Charles.
Well, yeah, but think about this. The team, half of that money came from taxpayers and hotels, etc. But now the team is valued at almost $1 billion. So the owners profit at $500 million. Is he going to give that money back to the taxpayers? You think there's any possibility of Ronnie Dean giving that money back to the taxpayers? Or will he keep it for himself, Big C? And so that's egregious. And I want to say this before this final segment, that this final segment is sponsored by United Labor. Guaranteed $100,000 life insurance, no medical questions. Also by Goosehead Insurance, we're the leaders in property and casualty. And also by One Life Insurance of America. I'm a broker, and we do the best and final expense. So Big C, in the final segment of our program, we know that you brought up some great points. These corporations, they can go out and get money from taxpayers when they want to build a new arena. But as far as giving money back to the schools, especially in minority neighborhoods, since they're going after the minority athlete, that would take a higher level of consciousness. that Muhammad Ali did have. In the final minute, Big C, would that be something you would expect to see, or is that just fool's gold, Big C?
It's realistically fool's gold, Charlton. I mean, at what point do you not see owners having press conferences about their next great financial adventure, whether it's a stadium or who they signed in free agency? I know the America's become, best friends with Jerry Jones, not only, at press conferences before and after games, during the sideline of games.
Yeah.
He's the face. But, how many times during those press conferences have he talked about his involvement? Granted, he's a philanthropist, and he has the ability to talk about these things nor talk about them.
Yeah.
But, it would be a lot kinder in the world if these billionaires said what they were doing.
Yeah.
It's not like they can ever spend all this money in their lifetime that they're ever going to go broke.
Right.
They don't even need a credit card when they show up on their private jet.
Yeah.
So when you think about what you have in your organization, culture-wise,
yeah,
how can you not want to benefit that culture, Charlton? Because that culture each year makes you hundreds of millions of dollars. When you look at these African-American athletes, when you can write a check to an athlete, Charlton, for $100 million and not wince.
Yeah.
And he's not the only athlete on your team, Charlton. I remember years ago when Shaq had signed this $33 million contract with the Lakers.
Yeah.
They talk about, Shaq rich now. Yeah, but Jerry Buss was wealthy. So
that's funny.
He didn't care about $33 million. It's like, hey, 33 Shaq, yeah, take that. You need another zero on that, not a problem. That's kind of money Jerry Buss had that it didn't bother him to pay Shaq $33 million. Well, and you see that with all professional leagues and teams. We just saw Strasburg, get $175 million over 7 years with the Nationals.
Yes.
But they also signed a pitcher away from the Detroit Tigers in the offseason where they gave him $224 million, Charlton.
Well, Big C, you're throwing money around like handshakes. In fact, tonight's California Mega Millions, $270 million. And I think Charlton and Big C Sports is going to claim that ticket. But I want to also tell you every Monday through Friday at 5 o'clock p.m. Pacific Standard Time, worldwide. You can listen to Charlton and Big C. Please follow us on Facebook and also Twitter. And we appreciate you for following Charlton and Big C. So thank you for listening in. We appreciate you, and we hope that you have a super fantastic day.